at 5 o'clock. And modifications or additions to the agenda?
The President Everett, and then from staff.
Okay. And we go to public comment. Todd Anderson.
And Todd, I will, let me allow you to share screen. Hold on one second. I can find you. Okay. Okay, I think you can go ahead and share screen. If it gives you trouble, let me know.
Okay. Okay, great. Can you guys hear me and see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Todd Anderson. I own the Gorge Paddling Center, and I'm here to present to you some issues we're having here at the Nichols Boat Basin Dock. For those unfamiliar, this is where we operate our business, which is a kayak and rental, paddleboard rental. So the Nichols Boat Basin site here, we've been leasing the site for about 10 years as a seasonal concession. We operate a successful kayak and paddleboard rental business here. First of all, I want to thank the port, for all they've done for us here. This site has become tremendously nice over the 10 years we've been here. It was a gravel lot when we started, and now it's an amazing site. Historically, though, this was a non-swimming dock, and we've had really no conflicts, but the no swimming signage was removed about 3 years ago. And because of this, swim use has increased exponentially. Our key concerns with this, the conflict of use. There's really not enough space for so many users down there. There are also no rules. We do see a lot of liability and risk being there day to day with so much volume at this site. So the issue, as you can see, hopefully in this picture, is that when the dock is full of people, it is extremely difficult to bring our kayaks and paddleboards down to the water to launch our guests. Carrying these boards in the windy conditions is really challenging, but to get through all of these people is much more difficult. Our use, to give you guys an idea, last year we launched about 3,300 customers, launched and landed during the season. Our busiest day we had around 175 people, so that's about 50 people per hour going on and off the dock. So it's quite a lot of use. This picture gives you a sense, but we feel that it's a very vibrant and beautiful use. You can see our, this waterway from downtown Hood River, colorful kayaks, people having a lot of fun. With this big change of a lot of swimmers, there haven't been rules established yet. So we don't really have any authority to get down to the water. We have no priority to launch our guests. We feel the site has become like a public swimming pool. There's no lifeguards, no parental supervision. It's just a complete free-for-all scene that's going on the dock lately. Profanity, loud, vulgar music, dangerous horseplay is commonplace down there, and some drug use and drinking. There's really a lot of liability and safety concerns we see. It's a little uncomfortable being a business down there. We're semi the only authority, on site, though we have no regulation to, make any rules. There's a lot of seawall jumping. We know there's sharp objects underneath the water. And kids swimming down, picking up objects that could come up under the dock, a lot of horseplay, a lot of wrestling, a lot of people in a small space. So just, I'm here to hope that the commission can give port staff just some guidance of maybe what they see and what they want down at the site. Us personally, we do think a swimming dock would be a really valuable thing in the future. This season, I don't think that's feasible because of the timeline, but Frog Beach down kind of near Steve Gates Memorial Site, there's an awesome sand beach, big grass area that's hardly used. And to put one of these modular docks, if you can see that there, they're pretty inexpensive, easy to install. You can just put it in and take it out each season. I know the port is extremely busy. We would be willing to do that for you, put it in and take it out. I would also pay $2,000 to get that going. I really think it costs about $10,000 to put a specific kids swimming dock in a safer area and just alleviate the strain at our site. Immediately, though, I do think that it would be good for the port to set up some rules down there at the dock, so it's just not a complete free-for-all. I think these rules are pretty reasonable. A maximum number of people on the dock. So we can say, hey, you know, that's 40 people is too much. You know, this is not possible on a dock for our business to get people to the water or for anyone to get down with a paddle board. Maybe they give paddle sports the right of way to launch off that dock and not allow horseplay and wrestling. I don't know if you go as far to paddle sports hours only during peak times. But so far we haven't had any traction to get any rules down there. And, you know, it is an issue that we see being there up close. From afar, it looks really fun and amazing. There's tons of people down there, definitely. But up close, it is very chaotic. So I wanted to give you guys my perspective towards that and hope that the, you know, port commissioners would help guide staff towards setting up some of these solutions. Thank you for listening to my presentation. And, you know, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything, meet with you at any time, and encourage you to go check out the site. Does anyone have any questions at this time, or is that, you know, just review that on your own?
Yeah, the season hasn't really started yet, Todd, but I'm sure we'll all go down and there's competing uses for that basin that get more intense every year.
Todd, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you last year for your very quick response when there was a fire down there, and you and your staff were incredibly responsive to manage what could have been a very, we were actually down there when it happened. And so I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for your proactiveness down there.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Appreciate that. All right, well, I suppose I will let you guys go on with your meeting, but yeah, please reach out if you have any suggestions or any questions.
Okay, Todd, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Then we did get written comment from Brian Toohey, and everybody has read that. Then we have the consent agenda. If nobody would like to discuss any of it, can I get a motion?
Move we approve consent agenda.
And second?
Chapman, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Shepherd, aye.
Strike guy.
Chapman, aye.
Merriweather, aye.
Everett, aye. Passes. Yeah. Informational reports, everybody's read them and no discussion is requested.
If I could, there's one change, one error that I wanted to bring to your attention on page 15, which is the funding opportunities matrix.
Yeah.
Down at the very bottom, there was the item of the COVID ARPA funding. And just wanted to give you an update that ARPA is most likely not going to be a source of funding for the next phase of bridge replacement. It's going to be primarily lottery funds. But the good news is there's so much ARPA money that's out there that's going to provide some relief to lottery funding, because a lot of those projects can be funded by ARPA. But just wanted to make that clarification that that funding will likely come from lottery dollars, not ARPA.
Okay. And thanks, Kevin. Then we got presentations and discussions. First up would be Mike Davis.
I got to figure out where my unmute button is. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Davis. I am a professor of UAS technology at the college, as well as I have a consulting firm for primarily in the aviation industry. I won't bore you with all my background because you can tell by my lack of hair that it's probably long, and I probably would take too much of your time. But if you want to look at that, you can certainly talk to Michael or Genevieve. What I'd like to do is just kind of jump into it, because I just have a few short slides just to summarize some of my actions. And then I want to kind of focus in on questions and answers. So I think you got your presenter view up there. If you can, you're on mute there, Genevieve.
My apologies, I always pick the wrong panel. Is that the correct view now?
That's still the presenter's view.
Okay, sorry about that. Hold on,
All
guys.
right, it's all right. So I think it's in, while she's doing that, I think that, there we go. Everybody has in the packet their a summary. And so let's go ahead and go to the next slide and we can just get this started. The objective of this that we entered into with the port was to basically to provide a summary, basically not a detail, but a summary strategic plan specifically for the airfield, not for anything else, but specifically for the airfield. This is not to be confused with the master plan that the FAA requires that you do, and you've done it well. So I really focused in on first becoming familiar with the airport itself and its layout, general operations. And I actually went through and did some interviewing, not only with the port personnel, but with the FBO. And I did sort of what I call my walk-bys, where I just kind of walked over the ground and somebody was in the way. So I just talked with them. And I did that also even downtown. In addition to that, I have a number of long-term people connections that I have across the United States. I have been an FBO in the past, and so this gave me a lot of potential to talk and reach out. So I reached out to, I think it was 12 or 13 different airports of the same size as Hood River, and I had some very good discussions with them. The other thing is that I was directed to the University of Michigan. They put out a study a few years ago that they interviewed over 200 small regional airports, small ones, and actually created a guidebook for small airports. So I talked to the university, tapped into that information. That gave me a lot of information. But my objective was to actually put together what I thought would be a future vision. So sort of a summary to describe what it looked like and a future vision. And then also, in addition to that, I was to evaluate the FBO operations and evaluate both the existing and the proposed new FBO agreement. Next slide, please. So the actions, as I mentioned, was interviews, discussion with similar airports around the US, and we're doing some research, and basically that's online and talking to people and that type of stuff. Reviewed the outline, yes, read the master plan. One of my people that work with me, Todd, is the financial and business head of the department for the college. He assists me in creating business models, as I call it, financial business models. So one of the requests was to really take a look at and how to go from a deficit to a positive cash, and a number of committee chairmen or committee people were interested in that. So our actions was to actually develop a financial model to evaluate probabilities and what if type things. So we can kind of get an idea where we should be putting some effort into in order to reach solvency. Next slide, please. So we focus primarily on the commercial hangar, which was, I call it now the light industrial hangar. And the reason why I did that is because we did some extensive market studies. We actually went out and talked to people in other communities and other counties even to see what the light industrial needs are. I have a pretty extensive connection with a lot of industry, UAS industry throughout the Gorge, and talk to some of the people who are going to be looking at been in contact with other companies and other outside the state of Oregon who are looking to get into the state or into the region with their operations, trying to understand what the demand is, and really with the help of Todd, the financial, making these models, created a what if statement to determine what the price points are. We find that, and we've even looked at the general of the T hangars and box hangars, but we primarily found very quickly to focus on what I call the light industrial complex, which has the greatest potential to bring profit in and to bring excess profit in so that you can use it for the airport or whatever the operation is. Next slide, please. So some of the general recommendations, and you can glean this from the report I gave you, and we can discuss that after this. But if we're looking at the assets, and we should be focusing on really moving forward with the light industrial facility, primarily because it is the most profitable. Okay, so within a couple of years, we're actually having excess revenue. We can talk more about that if you have questions on that. One of the areas that I find that what we really don't want to wait on is we want to be proactive with our community. We need to start really getting into an outreach program, for better terminology. And this is not to wait for the phone calls to react, but to be proactive and to bring the community in. Most all your successful small airports are really integrated with the community and the community for community involvement together. So we really, one of the primary things that I'll be talking about, or I recommend, is really an outreach program for the community, because they're the ones that we're serving. And I'm talking about the local community businesses, just the people who are not even non-aviation stuff. So on the contract, yes, I've looked at the new one, I looked at the old one, I looked at the new one. I recommend just a couple modifications, small modifications to the new FBO agreement that allows a better protection for the ports, so that as we go down in the next few years and we see some turns and twists, potentially, that it basically protects the port.
Looks like we've got a connectivity issue with Mike. We'll give it a second to resolve. The internet. Let's see here. So we've lost him. Let me stop his presentation for a second. Michael, I wonder if you've got his number. Maybe we could call and see if he's trying to get back.
Yeah, I do. Let me do that.
If you'd like, Terry and I can move on to the next report, or we can take a break.
Yeah, Carrie, are you willing to start, and then we may abruptly stop you if
Let me see if Terry's able to get on. There's Terry.
Hi, Terry.
So I'll go ahead and introduce the topic, and I'll watch for Mike's return. This is for the strategic business plan update, status check-in with the commission. This is the final weeks of an effort that began in late 2019. We've been working diligently throughout this time, despite the pause that began last March due to COVID. And and really our attention being pulled in many, many different directions at that point, the commission wisely recommended we pause the process, and Business Oregon generously granted us an extension through August of this year to complete the plan. As you remember, we had a really robust public input process. We had a workshop with the commission, 2 of them in fact, and we have also since received other public input. We have received input from our committee, standing committees, both at the airport and at the marina. And Terry has started his work in earnest to compile all of that information into the first draft of our plan outline, which is in your packet. Also in your packet is a really detailed memo on the thinking behind our approach to the plan development for this go round. It's very different from the 2014 effort, which was a really, really deep dive. This is really more of an update effort, and it's been going very well. I think our outline looks great. Terry has gone ahead and written his first drafts of the first 3 segments of the plan. We haven't obviously started section 4 yet, and this is really an appropriate time to touch base with the commission, check in and make sure that you're okay with this approach, you're okay with the structure, albeit very rough. And thank you to Commissioner Chapman for highlighting the typos that we have to address in our next draft. So really this is 30,000 foot level look at the skeleton that we are going to be fleshing out over the next few weeks. Michael and I and Daryl met with those committees last week, and we got just really, really great input. Terry has not seen the updates to those sections of the plan yet because we sent out staff recommendations to those committees for consideration. We hosted meetings and received their input and incorporated those into a second draft that we have sent back out to the committees, and we're waiting for their review. So in your next review, you'll see more of that content. But at this point, Terry, am I missing anything of what we need from our commission tonight? Really what we're looking for is a thumbs up on the approach and the general structure as it is now.
Hey, can I get feedback from commissioners?
I can start. Incredibly thorough, and I think that, in my opinion, this seems to be the perfect path to be going down. I didn't really see anything that jumped out as being, number one, inaccurate. It seems to be the will of what we've talked about as a commission for the last 2 years, and yeah, so I'm behind it.
And I will say, you know, our next review, when you're actually looking at the first draft of the entire text of the document, I would expect that discussion to be quite lengthy, where we really will dive into the weeds of some of the recommended strategies, actions, and goals. So this is really, like I said, this is 30,000 foot level, just looking at the structure. But be forewarned, we'll have a longer talk at the next review.
And I would just parrot what Christy said. I really like the approach, making it a summary with reference to the documents, makes the reference appendixes easy to update. I think it's a smart way to go.
Great.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too, Commissioner Strike.
I agree. Yep.
Anything else, Michael, I might be missing on this discussion at this point?
Well, I guess I'd just reiterate what you said, that we need to plan the first meeting in June 1st, to either have a work session or set aside a good hour to make sure there's sufficient time for all of us to walk through this and make sure the commissioners are comfortable.
Terry, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think you missed anything. I'm just going to, by way of summary, does anybody else, does it look like my shirt is doing weird things on my screen?
No, not to
It
me.
looks very white, Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry. On my screen, I've got this moire effect and I'm looking at it and
Oh,
going,
weird.
it's really the wrong shirt to wear because it's driving me nuts. So in any case, I think the important point here for me would, and for all of us, I guess, is if you're okay with this, as you say you are, with this kind of short version of the plan that focuses on actions, and if you're okay with chapters 1, 2, and 3, with whatever comments you want to send in so that we can edit it properly, then our intent is then to focus on chapter 4, which is what are in the structure that we've given. We've got these categories of strategies that are ones that you're familiar with, and for a lot of reasons that we've documented seem to resonate with the commission, the staff, its stakeholders, and others. And what we haven't done, and then what's ahead of us, is to start populating chapter 4 with the strategies that have evolved over the last year as you've been working on sort of sub-elements of the strategic plan. I mean, coincidentally, the presentation just before this was exactly that. You've got Mr. Davis talking to you about a strategic evaluation, essentially a strategic plan for aviation, and all that your big plan needs to then, port-wide plan needs to do. If you had that for every one of your elements, marina, et cetera, you could just draw that together. So that's mainly what we're going to do. And then Genevieve's point, I think, is an important one. You will then get a chance to look at it, and that will be your first look at that. And then I don't expect that next meeting to go like this meeting where you say, everything's fine, keep it up. At that point, it's going to be digging into it a little bit and saying, well, let's get focused on this strategy, one or the other. And from there, if that meeting goes well, then it's relatively easy to get to the final strategic plan from that.
Yeah, that's as understood, Terry. I thought I particularly liked your comments that you gave credence to the fact that the commission is focused on our strategic plan and is implementing the strategic plan. So really, it's not a matter of a new plan; it's continuing the execution.
Yeah, and Commissioner, if other commissioners haven't read the piece that I wrote that's now called Appendix F, if you want to feel good about what you're doing as a port, I recommend that to you, because I didn't write that because I had to. Most of the time what I'm writing about is what are the problems going on. And that one was about, wow, this port has been doing strategic planning. They are following strategic plan. They're doing all the stuff that a strategic plan is typically talking about, actions to fix problems that you don't have to deal with. Now you have your own set of problems, primarily bridge and finance, but you're focused on that. And that's what your plan is going to say. And I think if we just get that done, then it allows you to move ahead with your work and to refer anybody that cares to that strategic plan to know why you're moving the way you are.
Right.
And I like the way you segmented the appendixes. We can take advice without addressing the whole plan. We can pull an appendix and focus on that issue.
Okay.
I feel really confident that when you see this first draft, there will be very few surprises, and you will be reminded of some in-depth commission discussions, especially around the real estate development strategy, the bridge replacement strategy, needs and issues around waterfront recreation. These are all things that you've been working very hard on, and we've been recording your direction, and we're making sure that it'll be reflected in the plan. So I really look forward to that first draft and that discussion.
Okay.
And Mike is back. if you'll give me a moment, I'll restart his presentation if you'd like.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody.
No,
For some
welcome
reason,
back.
my computer just decided that this was the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you,
just
Carrie.
Murphy's Law, you know.
Did it update itself?
I wished it would.
Is that back where we left off, Mike?
Yeah, I believe so. What I was, I think the first two items here, the assets and a proactive community outreach, those are the main things that I've come up with that is sort of our one of the recommended targets that we look at. One is looking at the light industrial because we can get premium dollars for that, and the market's ready for this. There's no two ways about that, just by the number of people that's still calling me on it. Proactive outreach. I think that we are a community. We serve them, and talking with the community a bit and talking with other airports. This is one of their sort of a prime objectives, is to make this a community airport where everybody comes to it to have some fun and to really be involved, and that increases business, etc.
Now, Mike, could you maybe color that in a little bit for me? Because when I think about like if you've talked to other airports that are doing things beyond when we got the airport advisory committee, we have the Glide Club. We feel like we're open to clubs.
Yeah.
And flight training. What are other airports doing to actually boost that?
Yeah, what other people are doing, there's a whole bunch of, in fact, I have a list here that I can actually give to you later on. But one of, I think, the opportunities is, of course, maybe I'm a little prejudiced too, and I have to admit this, is that get the college involved a little bit more, bring the schools into it. I think there's some great opportunities. I talked to Big Bend College, for an example, and their airport up there, and they actually brought in a small training net for better purposes for drones. And this had a huge impact on the airport on increasing sales of, or actually people going to lessons. It brought the community out. Next thing you know, you had families coming out and watching this stuff and going, this is a great airport. Your airports are a place that people like to go, and bringing in sort of a welcoming. And I think you guys got a great potential to do this. I was talking to Wham about this as well. That's just one of many to bring activity to it. Other ones is you should be talking to Wham about the possibility of having them putting a restaurant, or somebody putting a restaurant in, because that just draws like crazy for people here to bring in revenue. Okay, and then next thing you know, you have a welcoming. You need to talk it up. So you, as a commissioner, should be talking up this airport in our community, and then bring in an event or a task or something that you can get community involved. And I think kids and education is really, everybody loves their children and everybody loves their family. And so, and it's a good opportunity. But John, I only got so much time here, I know, and I can talk your ear off for the next hour. But I do have some data that I'll be more than happy to share with you later on. Okay.
All right, thank you.
And then,
Hey, Mike, Commissioner Strike, when you talk about we, are you talking about the FBO operator, or are we the port to incorporate the college and the high school?
Well,
and Wham.
What other airports has done is who operates the airport. Okay, that's the key element. Now the FBO, without questions, comes hand in hand. Now there's of the 200 and some airports that the University of Minnesota did, less than 23%, I think it was, that had the FBO was really the primary driving force for this. It was whoever operated the whole airport, okay? And they felt that was much better because it's much more community engaged versus profit engaged. So I think that that's why Wham is an asset for you, because it's a nonprofit organization, and but without question, the FBO has to be involved. So to answer your question is yes, on all the counts. Everybody's going to have to step into this, and it's going to ask for a leadership to to bring into a positive event that affects everybody. Does that answer your question? Am I offline or here?
No, I think you got a thumbs
Yeah.
up there, Mike.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry. I'm looking at a laptop now. That's my screen's a little bit smaller, and I don't get everybody up there. So let me change my view so I can see everybody. Okay. So let me just finish this one screen out, then I'll open it up some more. I think I've already talked about the FBO agreement. Hey, the new one's great, just minor tweaks to the thing. Shouldn't cause anybody a riff at all. All it does is just make sure that it protects the FBO or protects the port, because there are going to be some changes that's going down the line here in 6 months, a year, 2 years. And you want to have some flexibility with that to ensure that it doesn't detriment your movement. And that's all. They're very minor. But again, we're going to be in a dynamic environment if we can encourage everybody to, I said in my statement, to hire a airport manager. I think rather than to say you're going to hire, because I know that there's issues about money and all, is to look at the skills that are required, the functionality, and everybody, we're going to have to fill that. And to fill that, you can do it with volunteers, and there's some people that commissioners are actually given a certain airport task, an airport advisory committee, let's say, to help certain things, okay, that function as. And primarily what I'm after here is not so much the asset, because that's basically A plus B equals C, but I'm really after the outreach to the community and bringing in a positiveness of looking at us as a regional, a small airfield. So we're going to be in a dynamic environment. We need to evaluate everything as we go. So when in fact you do move the fuel, I'm not suggesting that you take over fuel today, but when you move it, look at that. 73% of all the airports that the University of Minnesota looked at, whoever operated the airport, and some of them were ports, had fuel concessions, and 63% or 60% said that was a major income stream. So what we need to do is evaluate it, okay? I'm not saying jerk the rug, evaluate it. With TAC Aero, I don't think it's going to change much there because they're a conglomerate. They have other assets and they're going to be here, okay? And so I think that's about it, isn't it, Genevieve? I think the last one just said, hey, let's have a discussion. No, I'm always around. I'm not leaving. I'm a local. Okay. I love airports. I love this airfield is a great airfield. It has a wonderful potential. So if we don't have the time to answer your questions, I'm always available to you guys no matter what, and supporting the port and supporting this airfield. Any questions for me at this point?
Mike? Yeah, Mike, Commissioner Strike. Number 5, you said the port should allow private construction of hangar space. Can you elaborate on that, why you have to take that position?
Where I said that, let's take a look at that. What I'm suggesting there, in some small airports, okay, that have budget constrictions, that there's areas of that airport that you kind of designate an airport kind of like what you do with land use planning, so to speak. I know we don't want to talk about that, but it is a look at what your layout is and where you want certain things are. And there's certain designated areas we have to weigh leasing the land to allow a private person to build something with the long-term effects of the airport itself. So if that person is going to be bringing in, you know, more airports, more airplanes, more business type stuff, it needs to be weighed. This is part of the dynamicness of the change that's going to happen here. I don't want to take that off the table because I've heard too many people say positive things about that. And I think that, and I didn't dig into that financially, by the way, okay? But I think it needs to be as we look at this stuff. But the primary thought is let's get the industrial building up so we can start making money.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, to some degree, but like I said, at some point, your ROI is not that important if you lose control of your asset.
Yes,
And when you go to lease
absolutely.
land leases, you lose control.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I would take a lower ROI and have control of the end product and the daily responsibilities than a higher ROI and
Yeah, in
land
fact,
leasing myself.
I would even go further than that, Hobie. I would even say that, hey, let's look at a specific area. Don't spread it out. Don't integrate in everything. That's the wrong thing to do here. Look at and manage it. Don't let it manage you. So we really have to take not only an ROI look at it, and like you said, strategic loss of control, but I think that's also have to look at the overall plan of that area. You may think you got limited land, okay, and really you have influence on the land around you. So we look at that as an asset as well.
Hey, Mike, for the commissioners who are not pilots or aviators, can you give me a vision of the 21st century FBO, what it's going to look like? What kind of amenities are going to be held there? Staffing, is it going to be more high tech? I mean, my vision, I think, is totally different than our existing facility.
Yeah.
So can you give me your version? And also, when you had contact with those 200 different airports, where are they going far as the 21st century?
Where they're going is really the technology for the pilots. Okay, what I'm saying there is that when I first took my lessons back so many years ago, we don't want to talk about. It's very, very hands-on, very, whereas the new technologies are integrated even in our airplanes, in our watches, in our cell phones, and everything, to where when you walk into a small FBO or a small office, it doesn't have to be an FBO, by the way. It can be just a place that you could congregate. That's why I suggested that we take a little bit of that building site near that and make this an airport office, because you can put a lot of technology in a small space and get effective use out of the thing, such, in guards, in weather, in things, in communication, and what we do. And also what I'm finding is from these other airports where they really, they all have this small gathering, or this, I call it a conference room. And what they're doing is that all of a sudden, like this one airport says, we're getting people who fly in here into their airport just to have the conference on the field, because it's there and it's available to them. So I think that all of this needs to be, it's a very dynamic environment, and we need to stay with it. And Hobie, you're right. I think, but technology for technology sense is, as you know, we don't want to do that. We want to do the technology that's affecting us for us. Okay. And yes, we have to look at it. Just like, for an example, I can even get involved why the technology on noise, recording type stuff doesn't have to be $7,000. It can be $100. And so we need to look at that and say, what's happening today that makes it effective use today and tomorrow.
So Mike, this is Fred. So
Hi, Fred.
When you were looking at the industrial component, right? When we put that industrial component out there at the airport, unlike a hangar where you don't need sewer and water, what happens with the industrial component? You have to have a tenant that needs sewer and water now? And
yeah, you're going to have to put sewage and water into the thing. But
yeah, so when you looked at these numbers, they're without that component of utility and that basically build out. Is that correct?
That is correct. We did discuss that specifically. I did look at, say, for an example, the cost of commercial hangar doors, large commercial hangar doors, which we would not put, I would recommend not putting in. Have the structure so that if someone wanted to put one in, you can, but don't spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars on that element. And I told Todd to look at that as kind of the wash to put an infrastructure in, and that is sewage and water.
So
it was the best guess, Fred.
Yeah. So the triple net numbers you're using on the revenue side include that build out, correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's correct.
All right.
So these are definitely models, and they're what if, and it's kind of, we did a lot of scratching on it, and but it gives you the thinking process of how do we potentially tweak this thing to profitability. And putting the start in an airplane is a lot less per square foot than, say, putting a tenant in that's aeronautics related. Any other questions for me? I think I'm about out of time. Mike,
If I could ask you, Mike, has this been before the Airport Advisory Committee by any chance? This report, this preliminary report you have here.
This final report that you see, and Michael, did we give that to the AAC?
No, we did not, but Mike did present to the AAC at a meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Was there any feedback there in terms of some of these recommendations and
conclusions? Yeah, definitely. Yep.
I have one question.
Sure. Hi,
and maybe I missed it because in your report to us, it said that you did not talk to existing tenants. And I'm just concerned or confused as to why existing tenants' input wouldn't be incredibly important.
Yeah, that's
Mike. That was really a timing issue. The question was, how do you get the word out to dozens of tenants? What introduction do they have? What background are they provided? And what series of questions would they be given the courtesy in advance? And there just wasn't time to do that. So I felt like it was more important to focus on WHAM and TAC Aero and those folks instead of the lots of T-Hangar tenants.
And Mike, also, do you feel that would be important to have that input?
I mean, the next step, as I call it, we have to remember is that when I came in, the due date was May 1, and so where we was hustling around, and we only had so much time. Hey, you absolutely. I mean, normally, this would actually, in an equivalent time, this would take me some months to do. But I'm not suggesting that this is not correct. I'm suggesting that this is a dynamic environment. So if it goes to another step into how do we integrate these things into a overall management plan, let's say, and meaning let's develop out the task list that I gave you and start putting it into a project or whatever. Without question, we have to go into and talk to the tenants, and that's going to influence some of this stuff. Okay, it's just like what Fred brought out. Okay, so all of these things are going to be tweaked a bit. Another thing too is that even working with WHAM, because I was over talking to them, they're Terry's of course, and the others has their own opinions and just like everybody else does, but what I liked about it was they're open to involvement, and that was great. Here's a nonprofit that's willing to look at this land that you button up to it and say, yeah, I'd love to have a restaurant there, So, and that would bring in stuff like crazy. So anyway, I think that we really have to be, the potential for your airfield is great. And I think that what we have to do is really sit down now, and you guys need to say, okay, let's allocate, let's take the airport commissioners and let's task certain things until we can get this into a profit. Let's prioritize these things. I really think that you guys have something here. If you want to, you're so overloaded between the bridge, the haunting of the bridge, and all these other things, that this airfield is going to take effort. There's no two ways about it. But if you just pick out a few things and get some wins, especially with the community, that's going to be big, I think. And that's worth the dollars right there. Just the community and the outreach.
Mike, Commissioner Strike, in your professional opinion, how many hours a week should we dedicate an individual from the port to be present or be working on airport business?
Well, I think
when you did your study with the 200 airports,
yeah.
what was the main common denominator? Was it full-time, part-time?
Here's this report. Okay. In here was, they even talked about that, Hobie. What they did is that the strife here, not strife, the focus here was that majority of 73% of these small airports had an airport manager. Okay. Then the rest of it was like 3%, which is totally unintended. They had an airport commission who actually acted like an airport manager. So what they did was, and this is where I think maybe we ought to go first, is we took the airport commissioners and then we divided up the tasks, okay, to where they're all volunteers, hey, and what happened there, what the interesting thing was this, when I talked to those two airports that were doing this, was that it changed their thought process of what's going to be required of the airport manager. So what you think about it today is going to be different than it is tomorrow. So it may end up being that this is something to consider on a short term, maybe the first year, 2 years, or 3, is to divide up these tasks, you could say, the responsibility. And they even list the whole responsibilities of what they did and how they performed in that. So this report is actually a really good report that I would highly recommend that you guys take a look at on the airport commissioners.
Thanks, Mike.
You betcha.
Yeah, and just to clarify, when you say the airport commissioners, you're talking about the Airport Advisory Commission.
Yeah, sorry, yes, airport advisory.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy, for that. Making sure that I'm saying the right words here. Okay. Genevieve, if you have a copy of this thing, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'll definitely email that out to everybody. Mike shared that with me earlier, so we can email that report out for further discussion.
Yeah, now there's some stuff in there, guys. I just want to let you know that there's a good chunk of that you already are doing today. Okay, because the University of Minnesota to me was, okay, they did everything and they summarized the master plan. Well, you guys got one. Okay. So look at the first section and then look at chapter, I think it is chapter 5, I think it is. And the rest of that, other than those two, are basically around, it summarizes an airport master plan. But the one that is, chapter 5. So the first section in chapter 5, that's what I want you to guys kind of focus on. And the rest of it, you're doing, Any other questions for me? If not, I really enjoyed this. This is sort of my end of my contract, you could say, but it's not an end of me, okay? I will be back on the airport. I'll be over at WHAM and talking about the college and how we can get the college involved with all of you guys. And, but reach out to me. Don't be bashful. I'm all for, giving the public what they want and all this sort of stuff. And if I can be of any assistance to you guys in the future, just let me know. Okay.
I have one last question and then I'll stop.
Sure. Okay.
Do you feel that this report is conclusive enough, or do you feel that there is additional work that you could provide to help us figure out the next steps? Or
well, you're giving me a perfect inroad of trying to upsell you. I know that. Thank you. But the answer is yes. And yes, you can do it too. You just have to figure out is that, do you have the resources to go to the next step? Okay. And if you do, hey, get the AAC involved, look at this thing and make your determination. And if you want to reach out to me and contract with me again to do another step or something, hey, I'm all in for you. I want this airfield to succeed, positiveness with the community. Okay.
Thank you for all your work.
You're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity. And I'm going to adjourn at this point because you have a lot on your agenda. And you guys take care. And again, if you have any other questions later on, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, Mike, thanks so much.
Thank you. You guys take care.
Yeah, the executive director's report.
Hey, Michael, before you start, I'm sorry, we're about 5 minutes from when I'm gonna have to step off. I'm just gonna do it quietly. If you need me, I'll be available for about 15 minutes after this via phone for anything. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, let me just focus on a few things in my report. To reiterate, June 22nd would be pushing the second commission meeting forward a week. And I believe Commissioners Everett and Merriweather, it works for them. And it's important that it worked for them and for everybody else because it's their final meeting. So we'll have a send off with a short parade and try to embarrass them, perhaps a dunk tank, but we want to make sure that everyone's available on that meeting.
Michael, is that in place of the 15th meeting?
Yes, it's moving the second meeting
Okay.
to the 22nd.
Okay.
Commissioner Strike, are you there? Great. Okay. And Commissioner Shepard, is that a yes? Okay. That's great. I tried to lay out these various efforts that have been underway over the last several weeks to seek opportunities for funding for various projects. Things have happened and occurred quickly, rapid turnaround with different forms, changed forms. As in some, I think we've done the best job we can to take advantage of the opportunities for ARPA funding and for federal funding and for lottery funding. And there's been a lot of effort that Genevieve has put in and Kevin certainly. So the key things to focus on, I think, and Kevin, you can correct me if I misstate anything, but we still are relatively optimistic that there's a chance for another legislative allocation for the bridge replacement project. We've asked for $5 million. There seems to be really solid support for that and growing awareness among key legislators, especially the Ways and Means Committee. So we're optimistic about that, but we won't be certain until the Oregon session is up. Second, ARPA funds are distributed through the state, and each senator and each representative was allocated a certain amount for their districts. That process of making the decision about where the money goes into what projects is a little bit uncertain, but by and large, if you're a senator, you have $4 million to distribute, and if you're a representative, you have $2 million. For both Representative Williams and Senator Thompson, we have focused on the Lot 1 Anchor Way project and also the commercial hangar project. It appears more likely as of today that the commercial hangar project would likely not meet very well with the criteria or the eligibility criteria for the ARPA funds. And therefore, at least as of this afternoon, it appears more likely that the project that we have to focus on that does meet the criteria is infrastructure around Lot 1. And there is support by both our state elected officials for that project. But I do want to add one other thing here. We are also looking at the possibility, because of these various opportunities, we're looking at the possibility of adding First Street to Anchor Way. If those two projects can be conjoined and carried out about the same time, you fundamentally have set most of the framework for Lot 1. You've moved First Street over, you've established that row of effectively commercially zoned property along Nichols Basin. You've put in place the major infrastructure components, and you've allowed yourself the opportunity not only for a transit center, but to carry out the platting in smaller phases for Lot 1. The two projects combined would be order of magnitude $4 to $4.5 million. And the question is, with these various opportunities, is it possible to put together, if we're successful in various of these, that put enough sufficiently together to be able to do both projects together? It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it does look like between the EDA funds and the opportunity for some ARPA funding, the Immediate Opportunity Fund grant, which is an ODOT grant, which maybe they're considering going from $250,000 to $500,000. And I should have said that we met with Genevieve and I met with the ADA staff, and the opportunity there would be an order of magnitude of $2.3 to $2.5 million. So there is a possibility of putting these things together sufficiently to be able to carry out a big part of the infrastructure there. I'm going to pause and make sure that if you have any questions, I want to make sure that the commissioners feel that that's appropriate, that direction, especially with the potential for connection to ARPA and EDA funds, that you're supportive of that. Any input at all?
Michael, I had one question. I thought that Anna, I thought in maybe Kevin's metrics of funding mechanisms, maybe that was just for the bridge, but that Anna had reappropriated those funds not to go towards the bridge, but you're still saying that she's in support of maybe appropriating some funds towards Lot 1?
No, let me clarify that. Again, this is a very fluid process, but when we met with Representative Williams, at that point, she indicated that the priorities that she saw within her district tended more towards the immediate response to COVID, nonprofits, health, education, that sort of thing. That's separate from the lottery fund request that's been made for the bridge, which is not ARPA funding, although there is a way that those two funding sources might sort of swap in different ways. But there is strong support for that from a lottery funded standpoint. So
thank you for that clarification, and I apologize. It should have been Representative Williams. My bad.
So the net outcome here is that based on the projects, the opportunities that are there, the selection criteria, we're focused on the bridge and we're focused on Lot 1. That the other projects that might have been candidates, commercial hangar, panel mill, didn't really meet the criteria very well, or didn't have the same interest from our elected officials. And don't forget that Representative Bentz at the federal level has chosen not to seek earmarks within his district, which is most of half of Oregon. So there's no opportunity that emerged there.
I would just add to that, Michael, that the Klickitat County contingent has sent a similar request to Jamie Herrera Butler. So the request that we sent to Bentz, Klickitat County sent to Jamie Herrera Butler. So there may still be some action on that side.
For the bridge. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Well, Michael,
and Michael, one other question real quickly is, do you feel that incorporating First Street betters our chances of receiving some of these allocations by having it connect more to the transportation hub that I know that Kat is trying to promote?
That's a really good question, and I've struggled with that. Part of it is, what's the funding amount? What's a reasonable kind of gap funding for that's reasonable and likely to obtain? And that tends towards Anchor Way. what's the transformative project? What's the one that will really modify in a significant way at that end of the waterfront and create that additional land for connections to the water and for open space? It's the combined project. And so it's a calculation that's based on reality and aspirations. And I can only say that it appears to me it's worth going after the combined project because this is a unique time for significant funding opportunities. If those weren't out there, I would say, let's just focus on Anchor Way. Commissioner Mayweather, were you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll tell you the way I track it is that we had, as a commission, said we got about 6.5 million that Fred is willing or encouraging us to invest wisely during this time of having bridge revenue to back the bond or the debt. And we said we're going to do 3.5 million for the airport hangar, 2 million for the opportunity that did not work out up at Hanel, and 1.5 million for Anchor Way. So really that seems, what that says to me is we got 1.5 million already committed to those utilities. If we're 3 million, if we can get $3 million from the current circumstance of having a lot of money on the street, that's great. I mean, we had a project that was well positioned and it rained on us. That was nice. Certainly, we have 1.5 million already committed. We got 2 million kind of on a float because the deal fell through. It certainly seems worth going after.
Thank you. Commissioner Merriweather, did you have something?
Yes, yeah, we had adopted a phased approach to Law 1 primarily because we didn't have the resources to take it on all at once. And as we all know, we sought urban renewal funds and other things like that, and then we're unable to do so. If this falls into our lap, I mean, it's just basically doing a couple of phases of it. The same thing we talked about doing over a period of time. There are other opportunities, I guess, or other projects that these funds could be obligated toward. The thing I think that is, I guess, most compelling about Law 1 and for the use of these funds, if we can do it, is that no one else is going to do it but us. Some of the other projects, whether it be a transportation hub or some other things, there'll be other advocates for that or other efforts to do that. But Lot 1 development is pretty much going to have to be the port of the river. So yeah, I like the idea of trying to secure as much funding as we can at this time because of the unique circumstances and trying to get as much of Lot 1 as possible.
Yeah, thanks for that. Let me, if I could, add one other twist, which is that, remember, the commission has allocated $10,000 to do the, call it 15% engineering for Anchor Way. So we have good cost estimates, we have a good layout plan. Technically, it's accurate in terms of the utilities and such. To make the case at the EDA level, the EDA is the most important part here, because that would be about a $2.5 million ask. What we need to look to provide or have is the same level of engineering for First Street that we have for Anchor Way. And First Street's more complicated. It's longer. There's a sewer line connection. There's cross connections with stormwater over to the basin. And so to take advantage of this opportunity and give ourselves the maximum chance for success, we're going to have to bring First Street up to the same level as Anchor Way. The cost estimate that I have from the same team, KPFF, Walker Macy, that did the Anchor Way is about $20,000. So this would be, and I should say that the NOFO, the notification of this, the EDA funding, we expect to come out by the end of June. I mean, by the end of May. So we'll need to be working on this pretty quickly into the summer and get a application in pretty soon. So I'm not asking for, I guess, a decision right now, of course, but to say that that's, if we're going to go hard after this and try to take advantage of it, we need to have the collateral to do it. And that means concept plans, updated cost estimates, and a clear illustrative plan that shows how the two, Anchorway and First Street, work together. So this would be before you in the June 1st meeting for approval of a contract amendment. Any questions on that? Sorry, I spent a lot of time on lot one, but it's important. There's a ton of work going on, and I just want to say thank you to Genevieve. And she's done marvelous things along with Thorn Run and Hal at Summit Strategies. Very fluid situation. Parking enforcement started Friday, so we now are receiving folks that are interested in they have questions about a parking complaint, or they choose to challenge it. We pointed out in the report 677 regular season event site passes, absolutely remarkable in terms of total number versus prior years. Every indication continues this is going to be a really, really busy summer depending on weather conditions.
Michael, can I interject on that? I just had one quick question. I see that you put that there's 302 from Hood River Valley. Do we know the breakdown of the Gorge region versus outside of the Gorge? Could we get that information? I'm just curious of how many are, local locals versus Gorge locals versus completely out of the area.
Genevieve is the one that derives that data, so I'll ask her, and it looks like she's off.
Yeah, I think she pulled it for you, Commissioner Chapman. I'm sorry, it was supposed to get in there, but when Genevieve gets back, she did look it up the other day upon that request.
And then there's, of course, a focus on restrooms and trash and such. And as we've talked about, we're changing our approach as weather conditions and use dictates. So what we have determined to do to accommodate the growing need, especially at the event site, and this is in conjunction with this challenge we have of having enough staff to carry out the work. And we're really challenged with hiring for summer staff this year. What we intend to do is make sure that the event site restroom is open and available by Memorial Day weekend. In fact, we'll have it open a couple days before that. Our intent here is to focus on the event site, get that restroom up and running. That allows for the concessionaires at the event site dock to operate normally. And we have enough staff to take care of that, keeping it clean. The CDC guidelines are to clean it once daily. We can accomplish that. The second at the event site is to add another dumpster, because this weekend it was parked out. It was full, and this is mid-May. I've never seen this before. So we'll add another dumpster there, and then June 15th or possibly earlier, we'll open up the restroom at the moorage and make sure that's dialed in, certainly ready for preparing for the 4th of July. And then for these other restroom blocks that are less used and more remote, we'll just have to see how we go in terms of hiring summer staff. And we may be able to get those open, but we got to make sure we have folks that are employed and available to keep them clean. So that's a quick summary of what we're looking at right now, but event site's the big focus, and we got a plan to make sure that restroom block's open. That's really the end of my report. I wanted to highlight those things, and it's a very, very busy time here. We have the overlay of the strategic plan. I think we do have some more. We will have an AEC meeting at the end of May. We had a really good discussion, although cold, at the picnic shelter at WAM about the strategic vision. Mike Davis came and presented. There's some other ideas that are out there and that we will need to try to incorporate in terms of our strategic vision for the airport. But we will get another round of input from the AEC, and then when we come back on June 1st, we'll have incorporated that input for your review. And same with the marina. That concludes my report. Sean, you're on mute.
And I guess the commissioner committee reports are next up. And Ben being absent, Daryl, will you take the Marina Committee?
This was the strategic business plan meeting. And so it's tied into the overall strategic business plan. Genevieve's not here right now to pull it up on the screen, but this was really just a brainstorming with the Marina Committee of their view 5 years down the road, a little further down the road, of the things that they thought were important to try to move forward with, and responding to current demands and addressing how much Hood River's changed in the last 5 years and the directive that the commission might want to consider.
Okay, and nothing. So that was just kind of a open discussion rather than a focused strategy.
Right. I don't know, Michael, did you want us to dive into that deeper, or just keep it as part of the strategic overall business plan that we're going to jump into more when we go forward?
So just to be clear, what we did is we utilized the 2014, call it one pager Marina strategic plan. We updated it some and we used that for discussion. There was a lot of good discussion and input. We've modified that one pager to reflect that input, and we've sent it back out to the Marina Committee. So the intent is to then have them review and comment again, and we'll incorporate that into the next version, and that will be then brought to the commission on June 1st. So really positive meeting, lots of great ideas, many of the same themes, but we have, I think we have something that we can really utilize looking ahead in the Marina.
Understood.
And, Commissioner Everett, I would say the one thing that they, all kind of agreed on and focused on is really taking into consideration what benefits the local community, because Hood River is getting so much pressure from outside places, and just keeping the eye on the target of what serves our locals best, with what will drive the future. And everything from storage, like we talked about at our previous meeting, to redesigning the Marina Basin and charging people, whether you're local or visitors. So there was a lot of focus on that, tied into with a real focus on serving the youth in our community and how the port can be proactive with that. And that resonated across the board. So I'd say big picture things, that was kind of a lot of the drive, if that helps.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Yeah. And then the Airport Advisory Committee. You want to take that one, Michael?
Let's tag team that one. It was too cold, but there was a good turnout, a lot of shivering going on. I thought a really positive discussion. We invited not only the AAC, but there's another group called the AAC Friends, which includes residents. And so we had I thought a terrific turnout and great discussion. But it's the same routine. We utilized not only Mike Davis' presentation, but we utilized the one pager out of the, well, 2 pages out of the prior plan, reflected that in the meeting, discussed it, and then we've modified it, and we will distribute that back to the AAC tomorrow. And the next meeting will be May 27th. So same process as the Marina. I honestly feel like there's a really, a pretty good rapport has emerged between those folks that come concerned about noise and the impacts of the airport, and those folks that are pilots, love the airport, and I think have an understanding, a better growing understanding of ways in which we might kind of find the middle ground in terms of the noise issue. But I think these challenges will still remain, and the the part I liked about Mike's work was this focus on outreach, community outreach. I will say that there's been an enormous amount of community outreach over the last 2 years with the noise issue, and a huge focus on the airport with all the major capital projects and permitting. So it's not as though the airport has been unattended by staff. It's just been focused on areas where the capital projects are going on. But what we have identified is a draft list of future capital projects. And again, we'll get another round of input from the AEC and bring that back to you.
I completely concur, particularly with the first part. There was an outside shelter. The wind was blowing, 15 people showed up. And the atmosphere was congenial between the complainants about noise and the pilots that create the noise. It was such a different atmosphere than it was a year ago at those meetings. And the pilot community was doing less bitching by far and a lot more. Well, this is what we think would be better in a constructive, positive way. I think the Airport Advisory Committee is a working thing that we should, value.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, that takes us to action items. The first of which is to approve the amendment number 1 to the lease with Freem.
So what we have here is just a modification of the lease agreement, and this is just due to Business Oregon providing that rent relief grant. It just so happens that Freem met the criteria than, let's say, some of our other tenants, and we were able to get a grant for $100,000. So basically, turned to them and said, we'll reduce the amount of your deferral by $100,000, and they said, well, we'll pay it back over 6 months. And I thought, fine, good. It's just a quicker payback period. So we just changed the agreement. That's it. This is the only piece of the agreement that's changed.
Seems like win-win-win to me, Fred. And
Yep.
I like the fact that they stepped up and said, well, we'll just take care of it quicker.
Yep.
Can I get a motion?
President Everett, I'll make a motion to approve the amendment number 1 to the lease of Freem Brewing at the Halyard Building.
Chapman, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Strike guy.
Chapman, aye.
Meriwether, aye.
Everett, aye. Passes. Number B is the resolution renewing workers' compensation insurance.
So this is really dealing with the volunteer component of the workers' compensation. This is an annual. This happens every single year. And so we're basically adhering to what the Special Districts Association or the insurance component of the Special Districts Association is asking us. And so it's just another renewal of that workers' compensation component.
That's pretty non-controversial. Can I get a motion?
Yeah.
I move we approve the resolution 2020-21-3 for the renewal of workers' compensation insurance for fiscal year 2021-22.
Strike
Chapman,
second.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Strike guy.
Meriwether, aye.
Chapman, aye.
Everett, aye. Approve amendment number 3 to intergovernmental agreement. Kevin.
Yes, so commissioners, this is the third amendment to the personal services agreement that the port has with ODOT for reviewing, editing, and otherwise consulting on the NEPA process. Right now, the focus is really on the cultural and historic resource process, which is referred to as Section 106. So that's really where they're focused on. The only remaining element that could, I would come back for possibly is if there is something that comes out during the consulting parties review. And what that means is for example, as we're meeting with the historic preservation offices and the tribes, if there's some type of mitigation that's going to require a pretty extensive analysis on ODOT and federal highways behalf, I may be back to you with a fourth amendment. But at this point, I would, I'm leaning to thinking that that's less than a 50-50 proposition, but in this world, you never know. One thing that I did do is I did take the total contract amount, assuming that this passes, which is $265,000, and I divided that by the $5 million, and that's about a 5.3% percentage of the contract is going back to ODOT. So just for if you're keeping record at home, 5.3% of that initial contract is going to ODOT for their time servicing this project. So I'm certainly open to any questions that you may have or comments. Otherwise, I would certainly recommend approval for the amendment.
Well, Kevin, this one sticks in my craw a little bit because, as you say, it's 5.3% of the money going back to the people that gave us the money. But is there additional scope? Because the other thing about this contract is it's had a lot of creep. The number, I mean, keeps going up. And is it because there was additional stuff that they had to do, or did they just not estimate what they?
Well, you know, I've likened this to you're changing the siding on your house and you get inside it and see a bunch of dry rot. And so, for instance, I think the one parcel on Highway 14, there was just way too many hot spots on that parcel that had not been taken into consideration in the earlier amendments. So, you know, we had to come back and have additional reviews done based on the Washington State Historic Preservation Office. So it's there, I wouldn't necessarily say it's mission creep as much as it is things came up that hadn't previously been, we didn't know about.
That's actually easier.
Well, a little bit.
Okay, absent questions for Kevin, can I get a motion?
I have one question. What happens if we don't move forward of this? What's the ramifications?
Well, the ramifications is that we would not have the funding to complete the final EIS and the ROD.
So we're pigeonholed.
Yeah, I mean, we need to reimburse them for their time. Now, remember, they did ask in a prior amendment for a much higher hourly rate, you know, so we did negotiate that down to, I think, the $75 rate. So, you know, we are working with them to try to tamp down the hours and the scope, which is one of the reasons why I want to bring to your attention that as we're going through this consulting parties process for Section 106, you know, there could be some pretty, you know, there could be something that comes out of that process that's unforeseen. I mean, I hope that this $15,000 gets us to the end, but just keeping the options open in case something interesting comes out of that process. Because clearly Section 106 is, I'd say, 95% of our focus at this point, getting through that process.
Thank you.
We're almost done. We're less than 10% of the way through this NEPA process.
Yeah, and it's, at the end of the day, it is their money. So.
That doesn't make it any easier, though.
Well, it was appropriated to be channeled through them. It's state money, but yeah, this is we won't play hardball. We're not going to win this one.
No, this is not. I've had my wine. Can I have a motion?
I move we approve amendment number 3 to the intergovernmental agreement with ODOT for consultation services related to bridge replacement for $15,000.
Chapman second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Right, guy.
Fairweather, aye.
Chapman, I.
Everett, aye. Passes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And then the last action item to authorize the execution of employment agreement with Kevin Greenwood. Michael?
Yeah, I think this is pretty self-explanatory in terms of the practical aspects of it. Kevin has been employed here for, well, since 2018, 2017. Yeah, January of 18. And I will say that the job he's done, in my opinion, has been terrific. He's exactly what we needed. And at the same time, the job has changed and will change in the future. And we need to make sure that Kevin's job description is accurate and that we extend an offer of employment to him and that he accepts it. So this is a short-term assignment. This is not it's a full-time job, but it has a limited duration. And I think it's important for the commission and for all of us to affirm the work that Kevin's done and make a commitment to an additional 3-year tenure. There are some specific terms in here that I point out in the offer letter, which essentially says that he will have that there will, if the decision is made because of lack of funding, this uncertain trajectory for the bridge. But if there's something that comes up that requires us to say, look, we don't have the money, that in return we need to make sure Kevin has a severance package that at least is minimum. So this is intended to secure the services of someone who's done tremendous things for us here, and but also in big a cross commitment from him and to him. We don't typically bring these to the commission, but in this project and the prominence of it, and because this is an important commitment, I felt it was important to make sure the commission approve this.
And I might add that's with the input from the Personnel Committee, which amounts to Ben and I. Ben not being here asked me to give his support.
Hey, Mike, Fred, do we know the year to date, how much money we spent on this position from January 2018 to today's date with all the benefits and everything else? We have a total number for that?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, I can get it, but I don't have it off the top of my head. You figure benefits was about 1/3. If you're just looking at a round number, I can, you're looking at
647,000 over the full
Okay.
contract.
Pardon me, Kevin?
$647,000, everything over. That's a 5-year. That's over 5 years for the 5 million House Bill 2017.
Okay, and the financing for Kevin's salary will be coming from where for the next 3 years projected? Michael, who's going to pay for Kevin's employment?
Is that to me? Well,
Yeah.
so there's still remaining budget from the 2017 money, and then we're looking ahead to the build grant. We're looking ahead to the port's own financial contribution match, and then we're looking ahead to the Washington money. So a combination of sources.
Okay, and the duration of 3 years, how do you derive at that, Mike, versus 2 years?
There's no magic to it. In my view, when you looked ahead, you saw phase 2 coming, you saw the likely durations for getting the build grant in place and the legislative process, and that time frame more or less coincides with the phase 2 efforts. After 3 years, it might be a little earlier, it might be a little later. I think we will know the trajectory of this in a way that would allow us to determine if there is another entity that's going to drive the project and therefore make the decisions about staffing and consultants hiring and things, or whether it would be the port. The basic contours of this looking ahead are that at some point there is a bi-state bridge authority that makes those decisions.
Compact.
Compact, sorry. Thank you.
And did we get any input from, since we're potentially earmarking money that potentially is coming in from Washington, have we had discussions with the Washington side on the length of the contract or any discussions?
Well, I will say this is a Port of Hood River Commission hiring decision. The fact that there is money flowing to the likely Klickitat County will need to be negotiated, but I have seen no indication that Klickitat County does not fully support moving ahead with the team we have. And I believe Kevin has had discussion with Gordy Kelsey there, who's reiterated that they do not have the staff to assume a significant responsibility for this project. I'm not sure if I answered your question. There's multiple funding sources. There's the 2017 money, the port's own money, the build money, and Washington money, and potentially Oregon funding from the lottery funding.
I mean, I would say that I think that Kevin is an integral part of our team, especially right now, while we're transitioning to our next phase. That being said, I don't want to overstep our reach if things are going to, we don't know what we don't know. I think that I would feel a little bit more comfortable if it was a 2-year contract with, a renegotiation clause or something. Because things are moving so fast, as you all have said, that I'm not sure that we should be committing to that long of a term. But again, I think I would just want to get a little bit more input from the Washington side as well to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Commissioner Chapman, if I could comment, we went over that in the personnel committee, and it's funny in the agreement that you exactly stated the uncertainty of the whole situation is, who's driving the bus tomorrow, even though we are today, and the offer is for a 3-year term. However, it can be terminated without cause with 3 months notice. If we do that, we have to pay 3 months severance. Kevin can terminate with 3 months notice. So really, it's the 3-year term could almost be considered aspirational. And the termination provisions give attention to the fact that this is a very uncertain situation.
So if Kevin terminates, then he still gets 3 months severance, or does the 3 month severance happen if the port terminates?
That's a question I never asked. It says termination without cause.
The way it's written, that if there is termination without cause, likely a lack of funding or another entity is taking over the project or transferring that, then we can terminate this contract with a 3 month severance payment. I think that's the minimum that we would owe, and our obligation would be. That's without cause. If Kevin decides to take another job and move on, that would not, we would not provide 3 month severance.
In fact, we'd be unhappy.
Michael, just one more thing. Was this supposed to be at his present salary? I'm just looking at the numbers, sorry.
The intent was to make sure that it would be a present salary.
Okay, so that
operated a
probably is
position.
a different number than what's here, but okay.
So I would strongly urge the commission to support this action and unanimously approve it.
As would I, from the personnel committee perspective.
And I understand that. Let me say this, and I think Kevin has done an outstanding job and has been a very valuable part of this team. As an outgoing commissioner, I must admit I'm a little hesitant to take this action, as there are going to be 2 new commissioners as part of this in just a couple of less than 2 months. And unless certainly those incumbents who are continuing on are fully comfortable with it, I don't know that I'm comfortable taking this action at this time. That may be something that would best be considered by the new commission when they're all in place.
Well, I mean, I can fully support, and again, I agree that Kevin's done a fantastic job, and I think he's an integral part to the team, the relationships that he's formed, and just the amount he has been able to, do for our team is amazing. It's the 3 that's concerning me a little bit. I would be very happy to say, I can easily say we definitely need Kevin for 2 years. I can see the pathway for those 2 years. But there's so many uncertainties. I just don't know if we know where we're going to be in 3 years. And I'm just a little bit hesitant to commit to, the port spending $30,000+ on severance when maybe the contract should just be for 2 years. I mean, we can always extend, and we can always do another contract. And so I would be very comfortable saying yes for 2 years. I'm a little bit more hesitant for 3.
Commissioner Strike?
Commissioner Everett, do you want to discuss Mr. Merriweather's position in regard to 2 new commissioners coming on board? What's your personal feeling, being you're one of those who are departing?
I think that the sitting commissioners are have the requisite experience with Kevin to make an informed decision. The new commissioners will be throwing him. I don't think that's a fair thing to ask them to judge.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, then if we're done with discussion, I guess I would well, Jerry, do I have to call a motion? What if I just want to wait till Ben's back on back present?
You don't have to. It's up to you. And if the commission goes along with your idea, it can be postponed.
Okay. Well, I guess that's what I'd like to do, is postpone it until we have Ben back. Then we'd have
That's
both
what the
individuals.
duration of what the contract is now. I mean, it's expiring.
I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, it's not expiring, to your knowledge.
So is the commission willing to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. We get a full
Table
board
motion
to
until
vote
we
on
have
it.
Ben have a full commission.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Merriweather?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, I'll table item E for the next meeting. And what's up is commission call. Any commissioner have an issue they'd like to bring forward?
I don't have an issue. I just have a clarification that I wasn't able to bring up during the director's report of those event site passes. Is there any cap that we're going to be? I'm just trying to calculate. I know how much of a challenge the waterfront was last summer. Is there any discussion on how we're going to navigate that many more people coming down? And also, does the commission maybe want to consider at a future date turning certain weekends to pass holder only weekends? Or, I mean, it's double, and we had issues last year, and port staff was incredibly maxed out last summer, and I'm a little concerned about that. But I also do know that there was a change in that last year the pass was movable from car to car, and now that it's not, I do know a lot of people that bought two, and so I don't think that that's going to change the usage for those people, but I still think it just needs to be a discussion.
The passes are still transferable.
No, I mean like between vehicles. So like my husband and I can share a pass. I was under the impression that you couldn't do that anymore.
Nope, they're still transferable.
Oh, okay. So then that's a lot of people.
We can refund one of your passes if you need it.
I only bought one. It's good.
Okay, ask your question.
Well, I'm just wondering, Michael, is there any indication of capping things or looking in the future at putting a cap on stuff, or a residency requirement or something else to, I mean, it's great money for the port, but it does cause a stressful situation, I think, for port staff to navigate a lot of angry people when lot one fills up. I mean, not lot one, when the event site fills up.
Well, you've suggested something that we'll need to think about and perhaps have more discussion. Remember that lot one is the overflow for the event site. So by its nature, by our parking policy and the policy that the commission's enacted, it's not capped at just the event site. We are selling passes so people can fill the event site, and then they can actually fill up lot one, theoretically. We've never managed the event site to say that you can always go down there and get a parking place. We've always said, you make your decision. If you come down on a busy weekend and it's really crowded, you can go somewhere else. Come down on a Monday, come down on a Tuesday, modify your, we've never said we're going to guarantee you a spot and it won't be crowded. What we have done last summer is said, okay, and it was in part due to COVID, say that we're going to say pass holders only at the event site. We're not going to allow other people to just buy day passes. And frankly, a lot of people, locals, like that because they felt it was less crowded. So they had less problem. So there's a lot of ins and outs and ways to look at this. But if you're suggesting that we should manage the event site to cap the number of passes or limit the pass sales to just local residents in some fashion, that's going to require us to look ahead to next summer. What we can do, if the commission wants to, is say pass holders only at the event site and the lot one, but that commission would need to give that direction.
Well, and I don't necessarily think it should be pass holders only at all times, but maybe on those especially busy weekends or, you know, I don't know. I think we just need to keep it in mind and be fluid as, you know, as you guys have said, we're already seeing record numbers down there. And I think we just need to stay on top of making sure that we're providing a good user experience and not completely inundating our staff down there. And then so when lot one opens up, that's pass holder only, correct? You can't do day pass there.
No, it's open to anyone.
Oh, it's open to anyone. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, why don't you and I set up a meeting maybe next week or later this week in regard to the FBO agreement and also Mike Davis's fighting, just sit down and chat in depth between you and I.
Sure.
I like that. Okay.
This week, how about
Thanks,
Friday?
Mike.
Does that work for you?
Friday works good. Yeah, it does. Thanks, Mike.
Commissioner Chapman, I'll just go back to that one topic on the event side. So just to give you an idea, about 50% of our revenues, I should say, day passes make up about 50% of what the season passes are. So it's not a small number. It's not.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. No, and I'm not saying that we should have it be restricted just to the passes. I was just saying, I know that a lot of local residents really appreciated on just certain heavy, known use days that we restricted it. But I get that there's a trade-off because then we're missing out on the day use fee users. So I just think it will be good to get reports over the next few weeks from the parking staff to see how things are going. And we might need to just have a further discussion about it later on to see what's working. I know we can't really implement any policy until next summer, but we should keep it as a conversation piece.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a supply and demand issue, and the preseason price is $100 for the entire calendar year. So we might want to think about increasing the price, but then that kind of takes away that local benefit. It's very popular to have a season pass.
Yeah, it's a limited resource and we have a growing demand. It's a hard problem.
Oh, and that brings up one other thing in response to the public comment from Brian Toohey. I did speak with him, and maybe Genevieve, if we could set up a meeting for the three of us to kind of go down there and stand, and he could kind of better, as a user and as someone who's witnessed a lot of different things, maybe we can just utilize maybe the Kiteboard and Windsurfing Association before the port dives into signage. Maybe we should get some input from the user groups as to what they're seeing and where the problematic areas are, because it sounds like there's specific areas that are problematic, and maybe if they just pointed that out to us, it could save us a lot of time, like you said in the email back, of do you put 100 signs out or just one, and what's more effective? Right. So
yeah,
I'd love to set that up with you.
Yeah, and Daryl and John and Michael and I met with the CGW2 folks just to form our team for that grant fund specifically. And our first meeting was focused on those 2 additional rigging areas, but I definitely enlisted their help on that safety signage issue. I did not move here for the wind, so I need all the help I can get. And thank goodness Daryl is so experienced and has used the event site personally for so long. And so, yeah, we are going to go to the users and to the experts for that, for sure.
And Commissioner Chapman, we are planning next week on Wednesday, which I believe is the 26th, is when we switch over the signage. So it's before we do anything, we have a big signage shift coming up, and we have hundreds of signs in our back room, hundreds, maybe thousands, but plucking the right ones and readjusting. But once we do that, then we can look at it and get a game plan if we need more signage. And really what I think we're narrowing it down to at this point is the beach goers not understanding about kite lines. Otherwise, we're pretty good for the most, so we can focus on that. But if we could wait a couple weeks to get everything switched, that'd be awesome.
Okay, any more comment? In that case, we're adjourned.